Hi guys, it has been a hot minute since I have been on here. I took a little bit of time over the holidays just to chill, and it feels really good to be back creating. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Leanne and I'm the face behind Small Gestures Vintage and Crafts. So in this week's video, I am making over some things from my inventory and giving them a little bit of a new life. They will be listed on my website for the next week or so, sgvintagecrafts.com, until they make their trip down to my booth, Angry Mama's Antiques and Interiors in Dahlonega, Georgia. I had a lot of fun creating this week, so if you want to see what I came up with, then keep watching and let's do it. For my first project this week, I picked up two of these Ozark walnut ware bowls, and this one, I've had these in my stash for quite a while, and this one is in terrific shape. It is gonna go in my booth or on my website just as it is. It looks beautiful. The larger one, however, it looks like maybe there was water that sat in it. It's got a split right there. And it's got a few scratches in there. So this one is going to get a makeover, and the outside doesn't look the greatest. There's a couple of raised ridges there as well. So I gave it a good cleaning, and then I filled in that crack with some Bondo spot putty primer and let it dry, gave it a sand, 2 coats of shellac, and now we're ready to paint it. And I am going to use some milk paint for this project, and this is Flour Sack by Sweet Pickins, and milk paint is just a 1-to-1 ratio of water to paint, and you want to put your water in your mixing container first and then add the paint on top. It will mix and incorporate much better, and you won't end up with a bunch of gunky paint at the bottom of your container. I love to use one of these little milk frothers to get it incorporated really well, and then you just set it aside for about 10 minutes to thicken up. And you can see, of course, when the first coat as always looks pretty scary when it goes on, but have patience. The second and third coat always makes a huge, huge difference. So this is after the second coat, and you can see how the coverage improved, and I got super excited at this point because you can see all of that gorgeous cracking coming through. It definitely needed a third coat, so I dried it thoroughly and then gave it a third coat and then proceeded to dry it, and again, great cracking came through. And I knew it was going to take several coats because we're talking about white paint over dark wood. And as I was drying it, there were still some areas that looked kind of splotchy to me. So I really thinned out what paint I had left and went over it one final time with a thin coat just to even everything out, so I didn't have some of those dark splotches showing through. And here we are, the final coat, drying it. This is what milk paint is all about. Look at all that gorgeous crackle. I just love it. After everything was thoroughly dry, then you always want to sand the milk paint to get off any loose or chipping paint, and I love using a little nylon brush to kind of get under the paint. If there's anything that's lifted, then these little bristles are going to get under it instead of just kind of smoothing it out with sandpaper. So I always use both a brush and sandpaper when I am finishing out some milk paint. The only chipping I got really was right there, and I'm getting a little bit as I go around the edges, but really just some yummy crackle. So here we are the next day. Look at that. That looks so good. I can't wait to finish this thing up. I really wanted to do florals just on part of the bowl. I thought about Rose Botanical by IOD and then St. Germain, some of the floral in there, but those are beautiful, colorful roses, and I really wanted something more subtle to not fight with whatever anybody wants to put in the bowl. So I went to one of my favorites by Dixie Belle, and this is a cotton and eucalyptus, I believe. And it's really definitely more on the subtle side, which is what I wanted. This is a sign that I made with it. I've used it. I actually used this transfer in my very first YouTube video, and I've used it several times since. And I just thought this would give me the look that I wanted. I just kind of wanted something to trail around the side. And again, not stand out, but something to be more neutral. So this is what I decided to go with. So I'm just trying to get my placement, and it's just like any other transfer. It comes with a transfer stick, and you just peel off the backing and start rubbing the transfer onto your surface. After the transfer is fully applied to the surface, then you just want to burnish it in and just rub it in really, really well. Make sure that there's no air bubbles, no wrinkles, and everything is secured down to the surface before moving on to your next step, which is maybe to apply more transfers like I'm doing. So this piece is really going to go down into the curve of the bowl. So I'm just making a bunch of relief cuts so it will, bend to the shape of the bowl a little easier. And then I'm just kind of working down from the top on my way down. And so I can move the transfer as needed, and it will reduce any wrinkling or cracking. Now, if you're familiar with transfers, you know that IOD transfers come flat. Dixie Belle and Redesign transfers, I believe, also come in the tube, and they can curl up. So it's very important that when you have leftover scraps of your transfers, if they're in a tube, that you either tape them, or I just like to staple them so they don't separate and get stuck to one another. I did realize before I started waxing that I had a little wrinkle in that bottom leaf, so I'm just going through and making sure everything is good and adhered. And I'm coming in with some DIY clear wax. And I don't want to use dark wax directly on this because I'm afraid it'll make the white paint, look muddy. So I'm just using clear wax. And the more I'm doing it and that dark wood underneath is showing through the cracks, I'm thinking that that's all I really want. I don't really think I want to use a dark wax on here. I love the lighter color, and I don't want to take a chance of it getting too dark. So I think I'm just going to stick with it the way it is. I am just really happy how this turned out. It's exactly what I was hoping for. and I really love like how transparent the cotton blossoms are, and you can see the crackle through that. I just love the way it looks. This is a big, beautiful bowl, and I'm really, really happy with it. For project number 2, I decided to do these projects after I decided to work on the bowls. And these are little mushrooms I got from Dollar Tree years ago. I don't even know if they still sell them. I was going to do something else with them, so I painted them white, but I didn't do anything with it. So I took some Monet's Garden DIY paint, mixed in some fire starter, and I think a little bit of yellow. I'm trying to match the color of the moss. And so I'm painting the top of these mushrooms because I just pictured those wooden bowls filled with moss spheres. And I forgot, or I remembered actually, that I had these mushrooms and I thought they would be super cute covered in moss. So as you can see, I've got a large sphere and I've got some small ones that I decided to do, and I'm painting them all green, just so it'll blend in a little better if I have any gaps. And this moss, as you know, sometimes it comes out like in clumps. So I decided to pull out my immersion blender that I don't use very often and chop all that moss up, because I really want something that's more loose that I can just roll the styrofoam in to get the moss adhered to it. So I did that with almost this whole bag, I think. I went outside and I sprayed these with some Gorilla Glue spray adhesive, and look at how easy it made it. I just brought it in, the glue is a little bit tacky, and then I just smashed all that moss around there. I covered it really, really well, and then set it aside to dry and moved on to my next piece. I had a little forest going. So I of course had a supply of styrofoam cones, so I decided to paint some of them as well. And I'm not going to put stars on or anything on them. I just thought they would be cute in my booth for the springtime. They're not just for Christmas trees, I don't think. So I'm doing the same thing. I had sprayed it with the spray adhesive, and this one has dried. So I'm just going through, I let everything dry, and you can see this big one has some bare spots because the glue started to dry before I got it completely covered. So I let everything dry good, and then I scraped the excess off, and I went through and repeated the process again. Everything got another coat of spray adhesive and another coat of moss. So we've got 2 layers of moss on top of the green paint. And then after the second coat was completely dry, then I let it sit for a day. I scraped off as much loose stuff as I could, and then everything got 3 coats of Rust-Oleum 2X in matte clear, just to kind of lock everything in and reduce any shedding that might happen. It wasn't until after I was done with this that I realized, or I remembered, that I wanted to go in and do a little shading on the mushroom stems. So I'm going to add a little bit of dark wax to those, and then they'll be done. Okay, on to project number 3. I thrifted this years ago, and it held my spindles, and I think it was actually like an umbrella holder. The shape kind of makes sense to me for that, but it has these beautiful copper handles. I got this out in Arizona, and like I said, I've had it for years, but my spindle inventory has long outgrown this, so it is time to repurpose it. So I wiped this down and cleaned it off as best I could at this point, and then started breaking apart that bottom, not realizing that I was actually breaking it apart because it did break in half on me. But I wanted to separate everything out so I could basically put it back together. It needs to have, some of these joints are kind of wide, so I'm going to use my little injector here that's got wood glue in it, and I'm going to fill in some of these gaps and use some, what are they? Braces, not braces, vices. I'm using some vice grips to bring these joints together, and then I used my brad nailer to also kind of reinforce that, and then I worked my way up one side with glue and bracing it, let it set overnight, and then the next day I came in and did the other side, and then when that was all done, 2 days later, I did the bottom and again glued it all together and then reinforced everything with some brad nails. After everything was reattached, then I just came in with some Bondo spot putty, and I'm just filling in some of those holes from my brad nails, and the bottom piece of the wood was warped a little bit. I wasn't going to cut a new piece. This is old and it's been used, and I just wanted to keep it that way. But I did want to fill in this crack and kind of reinforce it a little bit, so I added some spot putty. Once that was dry, I gave everything a good sand, and then it got about, I think, 3 coats of shellac. And now I'm going to come in with some DIY paint. This is in Skeleton Key, and I'm just going to dry brush it, and you're going to see really the texture that this old wood has. So I'm just going to dry brush it, and then when that dries, we're going to add another paint on top of it. After the first coat was dry, I wanted a little bit more blue, so I just did another light second coat in the opposite direction, and now we're going to be putting milk paint on top of this, and I don't think, honestly, I'm going to get a lot of chipping and cracking because of how dry this wood is. I think it's just going to soak right in, but I am going over it with a beeswax bar. And all of the Sweet Pickins products I use are available on my website, sgvintagecrafts.com. And this is a new to me color. I have seen Ginger Chick use this color, and this is Curry. And I thought this would be a beautiful backdrop for some of the floral that I want to put on this, as well as those beautiful copper handles. So I've just mixed up some milk paint, and I'm just going in and brushing it. I don't want completely full coverage because I'm hoping to have a little bit of that blue show through and maybe even some of that wood. I think this is actually the only time I have ever used one coat of milk paint, and I absolutely love how it turned out. I didn't want to add a second coat. I'm giving it a good sanding. I just wanted to use a sanding sponge. I didn't want my sander to be too aggressive with it. And I know that I put the wax on the very edges and a little bit down in the centerpieces. So I'm really using a good amount of pressure to make sure that I get rid of all of that wax. And I take off some of that milk paint and bring through some of that Skeleton Key color that is underneath. I wanted to use some of the florals from St. Germain, and this is text from an old IOD transfer, and I wanted to add this to one of the sides. I was going to do floral on all around it, But the more I started playing with it, the more I decided I just kind of wanted to keep it more on the simple side. So I've got text and some floral on one, light floral on the two sides where the handles are, and the back is plain. So if somebody doesn't want to look at the floral, they can turn it around. I thought these transfers might give me a little run for my money, given how rough the surface is. But look at that, they still, I just rubbed the transfers in both directions, you know, with the different grain on here, and they still adhered so easily. I'm just super happy with the way this one turned out. I had intended to lightly just do a scuff sand on the transfers just so they blended in a little bit more with the rough surface, but alas, I forgot. But I'm just coming in with some DIY clear wax just to seal that the milk paint in, as well as the transfers. And all of my DIY and IOD products I get from Heather at Create Your Own Cozy, and I will have a link to her website in the description box below. If you do not already have a stockist for IOD or DIY, please check her out. I am an affiliate with her, and it's a way to help and support both of our small businesses, and we both appreciate it. Look how gorgeous these copper handles turned out. I didn't give them a big scrubbing. I really just went over them with a little bit of Barkeeper's Friend and a little brush, and look how gorgeous they are. I am in love with this piece. I think it is so pretty, and I love the color of the curry milk paint with as a backdrop for these florals. I did also decide to give the inside of this box some clear wax as well, just to nourish that wood. What do you think? Should I have put florals all around, or do you like the idea of having an option for a blank side? For my fourth and final project, I picked up this wooden box. I fell in love with this. I love wood, and I picked up this box at a yard sale, and I don't really want to do a lot to this because I think it is just a beautiful box. It's got a little bit of a scratch on the top, but other than that, it is in terrific condition. I do want to get rid of the teal velvet, however, so I whipped out my heat gun to start the process of cleaning this up. I figured a heat gun and my scraper might help loosen up all of this glue. There was, of course, spray glue on the edges, and it was so thick. It was a beast to clean up, but I think I got everything. I gave it a good scrubbing with some cleaner, and then came in with some water. And then this also got a couple of coats of shellac, because we're going to decoupage the inside. Now, when I decoupage, I love painting the underneath the paper in white, and I think this is just a white all-in-one paint by Dixie Belle, and I think this is white cap. So I'm just giving the inside of the box one coat on both sides. When you do white behind your decoupage paper, it really makes the pattern of the paper pop a little bit more. You certainly don't have to. It all depends on what you're going for. This is a beautiful paper by Royce, and this was in one of the Sonnet's Maker's Box. So it is a paper that is not available to the public, but I couldn't help. I had to use it, and I thought it's perfect with this box. It might have a little bit of a fall vibe going on, but I think the colors are just beautiful. So I've cut it in half, and I'm just kind of doing a dry fit and creasing along the edges so I know where to cut. I'm not going to cut on that line. I'm going to cut probably about an 1/8 inch out from it, just to allow for any movement with the paper once I start decoupaging. So I spritzed my paper first, and then started off with a starter strip. I got the whole paper and then the back side there, and I am using DIY's liquid patina for my decoupage medium, and like I said, I'm doing a starter strip and just starting at one edge and then laying the paper down. And I love just sticking my hand inside of a plastic bag to smooth everything down in case my hands are gummy and gluey. I don't end up tearing the paper. And I'm just working my way down, and as you'll see, when I put the liquid patina down, I don't put it directly up against the paper at first, because then you'll end up with a thick line and have a crease. I start down an inch or so and then work my way up with a little bit of the glue, because I don't want a big glob of glue or a stripe underneath the paper. So I just worked my way around both sides and did both the top and the bottom, and then we just let it dry. It's been a couple of days and everything is good and dry, so now I am just coming in with an X-ACTO blade. And you can tell I'm in my basement, and I was particularly cold this day. I just walked the dogs and it was about 23 degrees. So the hat is keeping me warm in the basement, and obviously I think I need a new blade there. So I went through and I trimmed both sides and then came in with another coat of DIY's liquid patina. Yeah, this is the liquid patina. I actually did 2 coats of liquid patina, and I think I topped it with another coat of Big Top. So this has got 3 coats on top. I really wanted to keep this paper protected. I do not like raw edges. That looks a little unfinished to me. That's just my personal preference. So I cut some twine, and I'm just gluing in twine right along the edges just to cover that cut edge so you don't see a little bit of the white paint underneath, and just to finish it off. I did also treat the exposed wood parts of this box with some DIY clear wax just to nourish it a little bit, and I'm really happy with this beautiful box. So let me know in the comments below which project was your favorite, and if you haven't already, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share the video if you know of someone who might like my content. So there we go. What do you think? Tell me in the comments which one was your favorite. Like I said, it felt really good to be creating and filming again, and things were a little rusty. I think I forgot some things in the voiceover. I kind of got out of a habit after a month or so. Like I said, I will be having these things listed onto my website. So if there is something that speaks to you, then please do go ahead and snag it up before it goes away and goes down to my booth. There probably will be a delay in shipping. We have a little bit of a storm coming in. We are located in Northeast Georgia, so we are anticipating anywhere from 1/4 up to 1 inch of ice over this weekend. So things will probably be at a standstill for a bit of time. If you are in the path of this storm as well, I hope that you stay safe, you stay warm, pull out the board games, pull out the playing cards, all of those things that we have forgotten about with the advent of technology. So stay safe. My prayers will be with you this weekend, and thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and until next time, take care.